We'll go back to the honourable member for West Nova.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is an honour to rise today in support of Bill C-6. This bill will restore the fundamental principle of equality of citizenship and also restore common sense to the process of becoming a Canadian citizen. There are few privileges on earth greater than being a citizen of Canada. In this country, we cherish our freedom, our democracy, and our inalienable rights that attach to our citizenship. Canada has long been a beacon of hope and opportunity to many around the world, and our country is blessed to have been enriched by people who have become Canadian by choice. In my riding of West Nova, we have an incredible history that started the foundation of this country, with rich contributions from Acadian, Mi'kmaq, Métis, British, and African Canadians. Also, we know that through many generations at Pier 21 in Halifax, many more immigrants began their lives as Canadians and together helped build this great country. The most fundamental principle of the rule of law is that all citizens are equal before the law. We cannot have two classes of Canadians. Once you are a citizen of this country, certain rights and privileges attach. They cannot be taken away. Bill C-6 restores this fundamental principle of our system of citizenship, and it rightly seeks to reinstate this principle that was taken away under the Conservatives' Bill C-24 in the last Parliament. Now, I have heard all kinds of claims by the opposition in this debate so far on Bill C-6. But the most intellectually frustrating argument that I've heard that they claim is this, that Bill C-6 leaves in the law the ability for revocation of citizenship in some cases, so therefore the argument that we're making on this side of the House, that it is fundamental that you cannot revoke citizenship, is somehow inconsistent with leaving that provision in the law. I have heard this from the other side, and that this bill creates two tiers of citizen. In fact, the argument has been made that it is this bill that, in fact, creates two tiers of citizen. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the opposite is quite the truth. This bill remedies the fact that there are, in this Bill C-24, two classes of citizenship. Does the opposition not see the obvious difference between taking away citizenship from someone that never would have or should have obtained citizenship but for the fraud or misrepresentation, and revoking their citizenship of an otherwise valid citizen for egregious behavior done after they have been conferred all the rights and privileges that come along with citizenship? To my mind, there is a clear distinction here between something being void ab initio, that meaning from the beginning, therefore they were never citizens, that being the difference between something void ab initio and voidable in the future for future behavior. Furthermore, do they not see that maintaining the integrity of our citizenship application process requires a mechanism to prevent those that would lie in order to become a citizen? What kind of system is reliable if you have no mechanism to withdraw from it people who have lied, committed fraud, or misrepresented the actual statements made in order to obtain the thing conferred upon them? Of course, to have a proper system of citizenship requires a mechanism for those people who have misrepresented themselves to the government in order to obtain the citizenship, in order to take that away. That is vastly different than saying that somebody should have their citizenship revoked for something done after they have become citizen. There is no causal link. There is nothing between something they've done afterwards, their bad behavior afterwards, and their citizenship. So it is fundamentally wrong to suggest for a moment that because there are provisions that remain in the law to revoke citizenship for somebody who should never have and would never have been conferred citizenship, and somebody revoking their citizenship for egregious behavior after the fact. And there's no question, and let me be clear about this, there's no question that the behavior associated with revoking citizenship in Bill C-24 is egregious behavior. It is intolerable. It is criminal. It is repugnant. And that is exactly why the criminal law in this country, to the fullest extent, should make sure those people go to jail. And that is where they belong. And it should not be used as a punishment to revoke their citizenship. Because, in fact, it does create two tiers of citizens. It creates citizens who have dual citizenship, who could be subject of having their citizenship revoked on future behavior, versus those that are Canadians and only Canadian citizens. There is a big fundamental difference there. A Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, and I know that that line has been used on both sides of the House, but it's true, Mr. Speaker. It's true that if we go down the road of having more than one type or one class of citizenship, it will render or make less valuable the fact that someone is a Canadian citizen. Being a dual citizen means that you are a Canadian citizen, but a Canadian citizen is the same whether or not you have more than one passport. I submit, Mr. Speaker, that most Canadians understand this obvious difference, and it is unfortunate that it is being advanced as a proper argument to maintain these elements in the previous Bill C-24. I note that these elements were part of the election campaign, and in fact, Canadians rejected those ideas in the last election. Bill C-6 also reduces the length of time someone must be physically present in Canada to qualify for citizenship. This will help immigrants achieve citizenship more quickly and change the requirement to 3 years within 5 years total, so it will mean applicants can apply 1 year sooner in order to join the citizenship of this country. This offers greater flexibility for immigrants who travel outside of Canada, but maintains the timelines and does ensure that the new Canadian has significant ties and links with our country to be a full and proud Canadian. Another element of this Bill C-6 that I find a very good measure is the part of the bill that restores the 50% credit for international students in particular that spend time at one of our amazing schools in this country. It does not make any sense to take away the credit for those individuals who we hope to attract, who we are competing with other countries around the world to live in Canada, to become participating in our economy, in our country. It doesn't make any sense at all to make it harder for them. We're competing with other countries around the world to attract the best and brightest, and we must do what we can to ensure that they stay here. They have links with Canada. They obviously have a linguistic connection, either English or French or perhaps both, in order to attend one of our universities or post-secondary schools. And so therefore it makes sense with those links, those connections, their intelligence, their innovation, that we should be attracting and we should be doing everything we can to encourage those students to become part of the Canadian family. Mr. Speaker, we know that Bill C-6 also amends the age range for those to meet the language requirement. Now, Bill C-6 proposes to amend the age range to those required to meet language and knowledge requirements from 14 to 64 to those aged 18 to 54, removing a potential barrier to citizenship for applicants in both the younger and older age groups. Another measure, Mr. Speaker, is that all Canadians are free to move outside of Canada, of course, and this is a right guaranteed in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Many Canadians enjoy that privilege and, of course, maintain their strong ties and connection and their pride in Canada. So it is right and correct that Bill C-6 repeals the June 2015 change that required adult applicants to declare they intend to continue to reside in Canada. This is a prime example, Mr. Speaker, of previous modifications to our law that treat certain citizens differently. This Bill C-6 attempts and will remedy those changes that were made that are against the rule of law, against the best traditions of this country, Mr. Speaker, and that is why I will proudly support Bill C-6. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and listened intently to my honourable colleague's statement. And he talked, and I've been in this House most of the day, I've watched the debate over the last several days, talked specifically about intellectual arguments about why this bill is not being supported on this side. And I would suggest that we're talking about a very narrow band as it relates to the revocation of citizenships. Since Confederation, Mr. Speaker, there's been 8 cases, 6 since World War II. There are 52 countries that recognize how important this issue is, and those 52 countries actually revoke citizenship for circumstances similar to this. Wow. So I would like to, Mr. Speaker, hear an intellectual argument from the other side of why they are proposing that those who commit terrorist acts of treason and espionage in this country should not lose their citizenship when 52 other countries around this world do.
Honourable member for West Nova.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the question from the member opposite. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's quite clear. This is a matter of principle. This is a matter that a Canadian is a Canadian, and that having in our law a system where there are different types of Canadians is an affront to what we hold dear as Canadian values. I note my friend referenced 52 countries around the world. One that he won't find on that list is the United States of America, Mr. Speaker. That country has a similar law, a similar body of jurisprudence when it comes to citizenship as our country. And it is in the best traditions of both the United States and Canada that we stand proudly when we say that citizenship, there is one type, a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, Mr. Speaker, and I reject entirely the premise that because another country has it in their laws, so should we. Thank you.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and once again, I'd like to congratulate this member on his speech, but also put to him a question that may enlarge on the issue of citizenship. And I would remind him that something the Conservatives did, albeit another piece of legislation last Parliament, was that they stripped Canadian citizens who have lived outside the country for more than 5 years of their right to vote. You might remember actor Donald Sutherland and others publicly complained about this. These are people whose careers have taken them outside the country but had no less a connection. In fact, there are diplomats, Canadian diplomats outside the country for more than 5 years that potentially would lose their vote. I'm wondering how he feels about that. Would he agree with me that another useful amendment of this government would be to repeal that piece of legislation by the government to restore the right for all citizens, Canadian citizens, to vote in Canadian elections, even if they've resided outside the country for more than 5 years?
The honourable member for West Nova.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the thoughtful question and suggestion from the member opposite. And I certainly remember that issue being raised in the election and know that it affected many that wish to participate in our democracy, that have significant links and ties to our community, to our country. And I do find it unfortunate that measure did take away the right of those Canadians to vote. Obviously, it's not part of this bill. It is certainly something I believe that we should look at, and I'd be happy to certainly work with my colleague on bringing that forward, either as an amendment or perhaps in a different fashion. I know that it ties directly to our election laws in this country. It's an excellent suggestion. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Question commentaire. The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague on his wonderful speech. And I just have a question about him, and I wonder about what his experiences in the election were like, and how the hundreds of thousands of Canadians that will be affected by Bill C-24, the dual citizens. I talked to Americans, to people from Europe, to a lot of people from the Middle East in my riding that felt, to be honest with you, let down by this government, thinking, why am I a different class of citizen than Canadians born here? And they want to focus on one person, and they think this bill only affects one person. But it doesn't. It affects millions of Canadians that are dual citizenship, and they feel slighted by this act. And on the election, I heard at many, many doors that they couldn't believe that a government can do this to its own citizen. I wonder if his experiences were similar in his riding during the election.
Honourable member for West Nova.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the question from my friend, and I agree that there were many people gravely concerned about how this might impact on them personally by being dual citizens. And I think it's important to remind everyone in this debate that dual citizens may be people that were born in this country, that were born here and became by birth a dual national, a Canadian and a member of some other citizen of some other country. The former bill, or the law as it stands now, would actually mean that that person could have their citizenship revoked for an egregious set of circumstances, as mentioned earlier, having never lived anywhere else except Canada. And so, yes, people were concerned about this in the election campaign. But as I said, it's a matter of principle, and to say that it only affects a few that may actually get caught up in this makes no difference. It's a matter of principle. We should stand up for the values that we believe in Canada. Bill C-6, I believe, is a good measure to do that. Thank you.